Module 8 Final Project by Stephanie Hernandez. How advancements in science and medicine impact religious and moral values. Advancements in science and medicine often have complex and sometimes controversial impacts on religious and moral values. These impacts can be both positive and challenging, depending on the specific development and the perspective of the religious or ethical framework. Some key ways these interactions manifest. Ethical dilemmas and moral questions. Scientific advancements often raise new moral and ethical questions that religious must confront. The shifts in worldview. Scientific discoveries can challenge traditional religious understandings of the world and humanity's place in it. Support and enhancement of religious values. Science and medicine can also reinforce or enhance religious values, especially those related to healing, compassion, and stewardship. Adaptation and reinterpretation. Religions often adapt to scientific changes through reinterpretation of scripture or theology. Many religious leaders and scholars embrace the idea that science reveals more about the divine order or God's creation. Polarization and dialogue. Advancements can lead to polarization within religious communities, between more conservative or traditional and liberal or progressive members. Sources and examples. Instruments and experimentation. Think Tycho Brahe's Uraniborg Observatory, Galileo's telescope, Huygens pendulum clocks, objects that fostered observational precision and helped establish modern scientific empiricism. These tools reshaped power structures by shifting authority from religious doctrine to institutional science. Printing press and print culture. The rapid spread of journals and experimental records via printing a republic of letters, accelerating knowledge sharing and standardizing scientific discourse. The ways revolutions shape power dynamics and political systems. Revolutions dramatically reshape power dynamics and political systems by disrupting existing authority structures, redistributing power, and often creating new political ideologies or institutions. Some key ways revolutions can influence political and power structures. Overthrow of existing power structures. The revolutions typically begin by challenging the legitimacy of ruling class or political system. The effect it had was that it established monarchies, dictatorship, or colonial governments are often removed. The redistribution of power. Revolutions often aim to shift power from a small elite to a broader segment of society or, conversely, from one elite group to another. The effect was that power may shift from aristocrats to the middle or working class, or from colonial rulers to local populations. Creation of new political ideologies. Revolutions often introduce or popularize new ideologies that redefine governance. The effect was political systems are restructured around new principles. Institutional change. Successful revolutions frequently result in new constitutions, legal systems, or government structures. The effect was institutions like parliaments, courts, or bureaucracies are redesigned to reflect new power balances. Legitimacy and authority. Revolutions challenge and often redefine the source of political legitimacy. The effect was that power may come to be seen as derived from the people or national identity. Repression and counter-revolutions. Not all revolutions lead to stable or democratic outcomes. Sometimes, power is re-centralized in authoritarian forms. The effect it caused made revolutionary leaders decide that they may consolidate power, suppress dissent, and create new elites. Inspiration and global impact. Revolutions can influence political systems beyond their borders by inspiring movements or triggering reactionary policies. The effect said they can spark a wave of ideological or national revolutions. Sources and examples. Coffee houses and academies. Coffee houses in Britain became penny universities, where burgeoning middle classes exchanged ideas, fueling intellectual democratization. Learned societies like the Lunar Society of Birmingham blended experimental science with industrial invention, laying groundwork for the Industrial Revolution. Cabinets of curiosity and museum collections. Objects brought back by explorers, plants, animals, ethnographic items, were curated in institutional collections, forming colonial knowledge systems and shaping European understandings of the wider world. Encyclopedia and printed knowledge. Diderot's encyclopedia materialized Enlightenment ideals, making scholarly knowledge widely accessible and encouraging interdisciplinary inquiry. How the economic history intersect with the building of an empire. Economic history is deeply intertwined with the building of empires. Empires have always been shaped by economic motives, structures, and consequences. Here's how economic history intersects with empire building across different periods and regions. Economic motives for empire. Empires are often built primarily for economic gain, whether through resource extraction, trade dominance, or access to labor. The empires sought raw materials from colonies to enrich the imperial core, and control over strategic trade routes was economically vital. Mercantilism and early modern empire. During the 16th to 18th centuries, European powers followed mercantilist policies that linked national wealth to colonial expansion. They maximize exports, minimize imports, accumulate gold or silver, and provided raw materials and markets for manufactured goods. Industrialization and empire. Industrialization changed the scale and nature of empire building in the 19th century. Industrial economies needed cheap resources like coal, rubber, and cotton, and colonies also served as captive markets for finished products. Railroads, ports, and telegraphs were built to support economic exploitation. Forced labor and slavery. Empires often relied on coerced labor systems to sustain economic extraction. Fueled European and American economic growth, especially in plantation economies, and used in the British and French empires post-abolition. Infrastructure and economic integration. Empires integrated their colonies into global economic system, often prioritizing imperial needs over local development. Colonies were often turned into monocultures, producing one or two major export goods, and colonies became economically dependent on the empire, lacking diversified economies. Economic legacies of empire. Empires left lasting economic impacts, both positive and negative, on former colonies and imperial powers. Colonial economies were structured for extraction, not development. Post-colonial states struggled to diversity, and much of the imperial wealth accumulated in Europe and North America, contributing to modern global inequality. Sources and examples: coinage and architecture. Roman coins and monumental infrastructure were tools of governance and propaganda, displaying imperial authority while enabling trade and integration across Europe. Archaeological science. Modern techniques, ice core lead levels, isotopic analysis, now reveal economic shifts post-Rome, linking material residues to the empire's decline. Handicraft and agricultural tools. Early labor specialization reveal how material artifacts enabled early economic systems described by thinkers like Petty, Locke, and later Smith. Textbooks and artifacts. Clay tablets in Mesopotamia and papyri in Egypt reflect economic practices, recorded transactions, property records, taxation, connecting material evidence with intellectual traditions on finance and value. The role of material culture in both shaping and reflecting these interconnected aspects of human history. Material culture, meaning the physical objects, artifacts, and built environments created and used by people, plays a vital role in both shaping and reflecting the interconnected aspects of human history, especially in relation to economics, empire, power, religion, and identity. Here's a detailed analysis of how material culture intersects with these broader historical forces. Material culture as a reflection of power and empire. Reflection. Artifacts like monuments, weapons, coins, or imperial regalia embody political authority, and architecture reflects the centralization and aesthetics of power. Shaping. Material culture helps legitimize and sustain empires by creating a visible, tangible expression of control, and the spread of imperial styles integrates diverse regions and reinforces unity or dominance. Material culture and economic systems. Reflection. Tools, currency, textiles, and trade goods reveal economic structures and relationships, and archaeological finds like pottery shards or spice containers show patterns of trade and consumption. Shaping. The demand for material goods fueled exploration, colonialism, and slavery, and material culture physically enabled economic revolutions. Material culture and religion. Reflection. Religious icons, sacred texts, temples, and ritual objects illustrate spiritual beliefs and practices, and the style and decoration of religious artifacts reflects cultural syncretism or orthodoxy. Shaping. Religious material culture can consolidate power or convert populations, and pilgrimage sites often spur urban development and economic growth. Material culture and identity. Reflection. Dress, jewelry, art, and domestic items show class, ethnicity, gender roles, and cultural values. Shaping. Colonizers often imposed their material culture to reshape native identities. Material culture and technology. Reflection. Tools, weapons, and machines illustrate levels of technological development and historical periods. Shaping. New material innovations trigger transformative shifts in power, economy, and culture. Visual art and the visual turn in material culture. The Open University resource emphasizes that objects, from furniture to clothing to ritual items, embody cultural values and social hierarchies. They carry meaning. Art and architecture of the Enlightenment expressed ideals of proportion, reason, and civic virtue. Religious artifacts expressed Catholic devotional intensity and contested Enlightenment rationalism in Spain and Latin America. The new science of history. Recent scientific methods emphasize material culture as primary historical evidence. Mass spectrometry, DNA and isotopic analysis of leather artifacts, ice cores, animal remains, all reconstruct trade, migration, economic collapse, and cultural change beyond textual sources. Thank you.